Hello everyone, this is Tamara, your courtroom companion. Welcome to the channel where we talk about narcissism, family court, and custody. If those interest you, those topics, stay tuned because there's lots of videos here on those three topics. And in today's video called What is Narcissistic Abuse? In layman's terms, I'm going to define and describe what I see as narcissistic abuse from a layman's perspective. I'm not a therapist. I just went through my own horrific journey with narcissism. So I'm going to kind of tell you how I define it and how I describe it. And then stay tuned to the end because I'm going to share with you a personal story from my own journey of when narcissistic abuse showed up in my relationship and my previous relationship. As always, what I say here is just my own journey. I'm not a therapist. I'm not an attorney. So don't take advice from me on either of those subjects. I'm just sharing what I went through and in hopes that it would help someone else. So if you need support and from the professionals, do seek that out. Before we jump in, let me just remind you to hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you'll be notified when I upload my content. So how do I define and describe narcissistic abuse? I wrote it down just so that I wouldn't forget how I describe it. There's some adjectives in there that I don't want to forget, so I'm going to read it to you. It is the deliberate, systematic pattern of abuse, which can include verbal, emotional, financial, or spiritual abuse, or any combination of those. So you can have two of those, three of those, all of those, or just one of those. Narcissistic abuse also includes gaslighting, pathological lying, rewriting of history, neglect, isolation, love bombing, and withholding of love and care in the relationship. And then after you suffer all of that, narcissism also includes the discard phase where the narcissist discards you like yesterday's trash. So that's kind of how I describe narcissistic abuse. And the important points of that is to note that it's very complex. It's not just one thing. Verbal abuse is like one thing, but narcissism can include that. It can include financial abuse, spiritual abuse, any kind of abuse. And then it has all those other factors. So it's multifaceted, it's complicated, and it's very complex. I like to describe it as being kind of like you've been run over by a train, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and there is literally no medical facility that is able to put you back together again in the same way that you were before you suffered that narcissistic abuse. And that might sound very like it's the end of the world, or you can't ever be better, but I'm here to tell you that you can. And actually you can be way better than before the abuse. And I know that's hard to believe, but when you suffer narcissistic abuse, you have to pull yourself out of it at the end, and you realize just how strong you are. You could spend months, years, and even a lifetime trying to recover from that abuse and from that narcissism. But just know that if you put the work in and you seek out the resources and help, you can come out on the other side. Narcissism is a poisonous set of circumstances that really does, at the core, destroy someone from the inside out. It literally goes to the very core. There's a lot of character assassination as well if you're dealing with a narcissist, and they will literally find out what you care about most or find out what's most important to you and tell you that you are the exact opposite of that. So let's say that what's really important to you is caring for children. Let's just say you just have a passion and love to care for children, maybe teach children. They will literally tell you that you're horrible with children and that you shouldn't be with children. They literally will suck the life out of you by destroying you in character, doing this character assassination. It's a terrible, gut-wrenching, soul-wrenching kind of experience, and it's very poisonous to the soul. Also know that it happens over time. These people do not show up in your life and say, I'm going to be so charming and so charismatic, and I'm going to do this for any length of time it takes to win you over. If that includes sending you flowers, candy, telling you things you've never heard before, taking you to travel to places you've never been before, buying you gifts. I'll do that to the point at which I have you, and then I will spend however long you allow me to, and I will destroy you from the inside out. They don't show up like that. They show up with balloons and candy and words that you've never heard before. It's very manipulative. There's a lot of manipulation that goes on with narcissism. These people, narcissists, can actually come into your life, build you up, and tear you down to such a degree that you might even be afraid to interact with any other humans going forward on any deep level, because you will be fearing, you might fear that they will be a narcissist as well. You will mistrust people for a long time. You'll be afraid to even enter relationships perhaps. Sometimes even friendships suffer because you're not sure if they're narcissists. You begin to question every human being. But just know that, again, if you just learn to love yourself and do the work, you can come out on the other side. And that, I know that there's a whole healing that has to take place, and I'm not going to talk about that in this video. This video is just for the purpose of describing how I see narcissistic abuse from a layman's point of view. But as I stated in the beginning, I'm going to tell you a personal story from when narcissistic abuse showed up in my marriage, my previous marriage. So this was on a Saturday, and we had a party to go to at my husband at the time, his sister's house. And then later on that night, we had plans to go to a Valentine's Day dinner at church, and it was just for the couples of the church. And that particular Saturday, he wasn't speaking to me. He was giving me the silent treatment as usual, and I was dreading spending the day with him at these two big events. But we were supposed to show up, and I was going to show up. So when we were getting ready to leave, he said he wasn't riding in the car with me to his sister's house. And I was like, well, we can't show up in two cars. That's ridiculous. And he said, well, you're not riding in the car with me. And I just said, okay, I'm not going. And so I just took the afternoon to spend with myself. And I had learned to do that. I had learned to begin to self-love and begin to really take care of myself in that way. I wasn't going to drive a separate car and show up to a party with his family and have him not speak to me the whole afternoon. I wasn't going to put myself through it. So decided to just stay home. I took a bath. I think I went out for coffee. I just spent the afternoon with myself, and I absolutely loved it. But then he never really came home from the first party in order to get ready to go to the second party, because the second party was more dressy. You had to wear suit and tie and really dress up. It was pretty fancy. And I thought, well, I guess he's just staying at his sister's. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm going to have all afternoon and all evening. Fine by me. And then at some point that night, I began to realize, I said to myself, he wouldn't actually go to a couple's dinner at the church without me, would he? Kind of had that thought to myself, and I said, no, his image is too important. He's not going to show up without me, the other part of the couple, because then he would have his image would be ruined. And then I had this thought that, wow, he's not going to let that happen because he'll come up with something that makes him look like the victim. So I decided to check out what was happening in my head, and I went, I'm going to drive over to the church. So I put on my clothes and I drove over to the church, and sure enough, his car was in the parking lot. And I thought, well, two can play that game. So I went home, dressed up in my fanciest dress, curled my hair, put on my makeup, and I showed up anyway. And I knew that he would be so pissed, because at that point, whatever lie he was telling the people there, he was going to carry that out, and he probably told him I was sick or that I refused to come, whatever. But I was going to show up, because by this point in the relationship, I had decided that I was not going to allow him, if at all possible, to make out that he is the victim and I am the perpetrator, and that's what he would do. He was the victim. He was the professional victim. And so I decided to show up, and I went over there and I sat down right next to him at the couples table. He was the only guy sitting there that wasn't a part of a couple, and he was forced to interact with me, and I could tell by the look on his face he was pissed, because whatever lie he told, I just showed him out to be a liar. And so I took kind of pride in that, knowing that I was standing up for myself. I was not playing the victim any longer, and this was a dinner that the church had put on. I was going to try to enjoy the dinner. I was looking forward to it earlier in the week, and then when he stopped talking to me, I became less looking forward to it. But nonetheless, I wanted to go to kind of prove to myself that I could stand up to him, that I could just do what was in my best interest at that point. And I was really proud of myself. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of describe again, like what narcissistic abuse is to me as a layman. I'm not a therapist. I just went on my own journey around narcissistic abuse with my previous marriage. And I'm hoping that that journey is able to help someone else along the way of either getting out of a narcissistic relationship or dealing with it if you choose to stay. If you like this content, please give it a thumbs up, and please do let me know in the comments what other content you'd like to see in the areas of family court, custody, and narcissism. As always, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.